I'm not the kind of person who spends money recklessly. I'm the kind who always has very reasonable explanations for every purchase I make. At least that's what I used to think. I wasn't someone who bought things randomly. I was the type who would stand in a supermarket holding two identical bottles, reading the ingredient labels on the back as if I actually understood something, and then still choose the more expensive one because it looked a bit healthier, walking away with the feeling that I had made a responsible decision, not spending money, but investing in myself. But that was before. Now I still buy those same things, the same familiar basket, eggs, milk, bread. Nothing has really changed in terms of behavior, but every time I reach the checkout, something feels slightly off. Not enough to shock you into stopping, but just enough to make you think maybe I picked up something extra and forgot. So you stand there, checking again very carefully, like someone who takes their finances seriously. There's nothing extra. It's just that the prices have quietly grown, very politely, very gradually, as if they don't need permission. People call that inflation. In the U.S., it once rose above 9%, the highest in more than 40 years. The Federal Reserve had to raise interest rates continuously from near zero to over 5%. In a very short period of time, it all sounds reasonable, like someone is adjusting the system to bring it back into balance. But at my level, that balance looks more like everything getting expensive first and me understanding it later. At first, I reacted like a proper adult. I saved more, hunted for discounts, downloaded more apps, compared prices, used vouchers, added items to my cart, and left them there, waiting for promo codes. I turned spending into a game. I could win. Every 20% discount felt like a real dopamine hit. Like I wasn't just buying things, I was outplaying the system. Then at some point, I realized something slightly ironic. I started buying things I would never have considered if they weren't on sale. But because they were discounted, they suddenly became smart financial decisions. I wasn't spending more. I was just taking advantage of opportunities. And the funny part, I didn't need anyone to convince me. I was very good at convincing myself. At the same time, things that once felt distant started to feel much closer. Stocks, crypto, options, things I used to hear and think, I'll leave that to finance people. Now they were everywhere, on my phone, in conversations, in my thoughts, and somehow all of it started to sound reasonable. In the current context, after the pandemic, in the U.S., millions of people received stimulus money. A significant portion didn't go into savings. It flowed into the market. It may sound impulsive, but when you look at housing prices nearly doubling within a few years, mortgage rates jumping from near zero to over 5%, meaning the same house, the same person, but the distance to reach it suddenly becomes much longer, then the idea of finding a faster path no longer sounds so crazy. I started thinking that way too. Not I'm going to get rich, just if I stand still, I'm definitely going nowhere. But if I try, at least there's a chance I might move a little faster. So I downloaded the app, opened it, didn't understand everything, but the buy button was very clear. And somehow, it was always easier to understand than the explanation. I bought something, not because I believed in it, but because someone online said it could go very far. I didn't even know how far really was, but it sounded like a place better than where I was. And the funny thing is, right after I clicked, I felt about 20% smarter. No evidence, no data, just a very convincing feeling. I started opening the app more often, not because I needed to, but because there was always movement. Up a little, down a little, just enough to make you feel like you're part of something that's moving, unlike the rest of your life, which feels slightly still. Sometimes I made a profit, not much, but enough to make me think I understood it. Sometimes I lost money, not much either, but enough to make me think it was just timing, which means no matter what happened, I could always keep a version of myself where I wasn't wrong, a very convenient system. Then one day, I sat down, no crash, no drama, just opened my banking app, looked at the total, and tried to remember what it used to be, and realized it hadn't disappeared. It had just been scattered a little into things. I bought because they were on sale, a little into those times. I was just trying it out, a little into decisions that at the time I fully believed were reasonable. If I could go back, I think I would do the exact same thing. And that's the part that bothers me the most because if every step made sense, but the final result ends up slightly off, not wrong enough to call it a mistake, but not quite what you expected, then maybe the problem isn't in any single decision. Maybe it's just that we're living in a time where spending money to feel like you're moving forward is much easier than actually moving forward. And the system around you rewards that feeling often enough to keep you going. So lately, I've started doing something very small, not stopping everything, not becoming more disciplined, just slowing down a little before I click, just enough to see whether that decision comes from me or from the feeling that I need to do something immediately. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling that you're doing everything logically in that moment, but that logic doesn't entirely belong to you. It's just that prices quietly grow, very politely, very gradually, as if they don't need permission. And instead of thinking something is wrong, I start adjusting calmly, responsibly, as if when things change, I should change with them. It sounds mature. I begin to notice discount labels more not in a buy because it's cheap way, but more like if I pass on it, it feels like a waste. It's cheaper than usual. And as someone who understands things, I should take advantage of it. On the surface, nothing seems suspicious. And the funny part is, I don't feel like I'm spending more. I just feel like I'm spending more rationally, like with the same amount of money. I'm optimizing better. So overall, I'm doing better than my previous version of myself. I start getting into the habit of adding items to my cart and leaving them there, not buying right away, waiting to see if there's a discount code, sometimes coming back just to check if the price has changed. There are times I don't need the item enough to buy it immediately, but I don't want to miss the feeling of buying at the right time. That feeling is strangely addictive. You don't actually need the item, but you want that moment, the moment you buy it, at the right price. And if you keep doing that long enough, you start to feel like you're not just shopping anymore. You're playing a game, one where you understand the rules. Each right purchase feels like a small win, not significant, but enough to make you feel like you're in control. And from there, it spreads very subtly, without a clear boundary. If you don't want to let small amounts of money slip away, then looking at a larger amount and just letting it sit there starts to feel uncomfortable. I look at the money I have, not a lot, but not insignificant either. And a very calm thought appears. If I just leave it there, it will stay there while everything around it keeps increasing, slowly, year by year, not enough for you to notice immediately, but enough that when you look back, you realize you've fallen behind a little, and no one tells you this part. You just come to understand it yourself. So from optimizing small purchases, I begin to feel like doing something with money makes more sense, not out of greed, but out of a desire not to fall behind, not to stay still, while everything else is moving. It still sounds reasonable. In fact, it sounds like someone being responsible about their future. And the dangerous part is, there isn't a single step that makes you stop. Everything has a reason, a context, a past version of you that agreed with it. So you just keep going, very naturally, until one day you realize you no longer think about money the way you used to. It's no longer about saving or spending. It becomes leaving it untouched. Feels wrong, and that thought doesn't come from nowhere. No one teaches it to you directly. But if you look around, it's everywhere, just expressed in different ways. Some call it optimization. Others call it not letting money sit idle. It all sounds very logical, very modern. In the U.S., interest rates are now at their highest level in more than 20 years. The goal is to slow things down, reduce consumption, bring inflation under control. It sounds logical, like someone is pulling the brakes on the economy so it doesn't overheat. But that brake doesn't just slow down what's too fast. It also slows down the things you were hoping for before. You might have imagined buying something bigger, a house, for example. But now, with the same income and higher interest rates, the distance suddenly stretches, not double, but enough for you to feel like it's no longer within near reach. And when big things become more distant, fast things start to feel more attractive, not because you want to take risks, but because the slow path no longer feels as certain as it used to. There was a period in the US after the pandemic when people poured money into the market aggressively, partly because of stimulus money, but also because there was a shared feeling that if you did nothing, you were being left behind. And that feeling isn't theoretical. It comes from watching housing prices, rent, and everything around you steadily rising while your side of the equation doesn't move as fast. And that feeling spreads quickly. You don't have to live there to feel it as long as you're in an environment where everything keeps increasing while you have to work harder just to stay in the same place. You understand? So things that once sounded risky begin to sound like a way to keep up. You don't think you're gambling. You think you're just not standing still. And the dangerous part is those two can look almost identical. I started to see myself in that state. Every decision made sense. Every choice had context. Every move came with a reasonable story behind it. There was nothing that made me stop. No warning. Strong enough to shake me. Everything flowed smoothly until you stop looking at each step and start looking at the whole path. And that's when it feels slightly off. Not a collapse. Not a total loss. Just you move forward. Seriously. Logically. With full belief in what you're doing. But the destination doesn't match what you imagined at the beginning. And the most uncomfortable part is this: if you go back to each moment, you would still choose the same way. There's no single decision wrong enough to fix. But when you put them all together, they don't lead where you thought they would. And maybe the hardest part to notice is this: you're not entirely making decisions as independently as you think. You've simply become used to trusting things that sound very reasonable in your head. And that sense of reasonableness is convincing enough that you never feel the need to stop. The rewards are designed cleverly, small enough that they don't make you rich immediately, but frequent enough to make you feel like you're on the right path. So lately, I've been trying something very small, not changing everything, not becoming more disciplined. Just when I'm about to click something, buy, invest, whatever it is, I pause for a moment, not to think harder in a strict way, but just to see if that urge is still there after a few minutes. And sometimes it disappears. Sometimes it stays, but at least in that moment, I know where it's coming from. I don't know. If you've ever had that feeling that you're not exactly doing something wrong, but you're also not sure you're heading in the right direction, there's one thing I've started to notice recently. It's not about having more or less money. It's the feeling that I need to do something with money immediately. Like whenever something appears, I have to act right away. Buy, sell, move, optimize, as if doing nothing means I'm missing out on something. And that feeling, it's very convincing. It doesn't shout. It just stands there, calm, reasonable. Like, if not now, then when. But if you look a little closer, sometimes the thing you're afraid of missing isn't the opportunity. It's the feeling that you're doing the right thing. I started to notice there are moments when I don't actually need the item, don't truly believe in the trade, but still feel the urge to click just to maintain the feeling that I'm still participating, still keeping up, still not falling behind. And this part is a bit hard to admit, because if you remove that feeling, what's left is very quiet, uncomfortably quiet, like there's nothing left enough to check constantly, nothing moving up and down, nothing to think, maybe just the reality of where you are. And it's not moving as fast as you want. So I don't try to stop everything completely. I don't think I'll suddenly become a more disciplined person. Either I just begin to notice that not everything that feels logical in the moment actually needs to be acted on right away. And some decisions, if you don't make them, nothing really happens. It sounds simple, but if you're used to always doing something immediately, then doing nothing becomes the harder thing. And the funny part is, in those moments, when I don't act, don't click, don't buy, don't optimize, no opportunity disappears in any dramatic way. It's just nothing happens. And that nothing happens, if you sit with it long enough, starts to feel different. Not like you're falling behind, but like you're no longer being constantly pulled, not faster, but not dragged along either. I'm not sure if this is the right way. It just helps me see a little more clearly the difference between what I truly want to do and what I feel like I need to do in that moment, and sometimes just slowing down enough to notice that difference is already a form of moving forward, not faster, just no longer instantly believing everything that sounds reasonable. And I'm not even sure that feeling is right. It's just that for the first time in a while, I don't feel the need to do something immediately. And that is something I used to think was completely normal.